Floatlines and bungees serve different purposes. With the floatlines, which is typically what we use most of the time here in New Zealand, we have a couple of different options in style. We have a standard floatline here, and it's not just any rope. You want some rope that actually floats. If it doesn't float and it sinks, it's going to get caught around every single rock you swim past, every bit of kelp, and it's going to be a big drag through the water. So these are your most popular style, which has the fish thread on one end, which is used to go underneath the gills and out the mouth and clips onto your spear gun, and the swivel on the other end, which is clipped to your float to stop the line from getting tangled up. You get multiple different lengths in that. We make them from 10 metres all the way up to 40 metres, and even longer if people wanted them to. Something to take in consideration when you're sorting out the length of the line. Even if you are able to dive to a reasonable depth, you don't necessarily want your float line to be too long, because if you have, the longer you have it, the more float line that's behind you, and the more likely your float's going to get tangled way behind you. So if you're going snapper snooping or hunting the shallows, 10 to 15 metres is probably all you need. If you're doing your sort of shallower weed edges to sort of mid-range, 20 metres, which is typically the most popular for all-round length, is 20 metres. And if you're going to your longer, deeper diving, maybe deeper weed edges on pinnacles when you want to dive a bit deeper, you want to go for maybe 25, 30 or even 40 metres if you're diving that deep. And the float line length doesn't necessarily reflect the depth you're diving. If you can say dive up to 20 metres, you probably want a 25 metre float line, because when you're diving down, the current and the wave movement is not going to have the float directly above you. So it's going to be a big drag if you have a length at the exact depth that you want to dive. We get lots of people that say they're sick of their float line getting tangled up all the time. So we have something here which is our heavy duty float line, which people refer to anti-tangle lines. It's got the PVC outside to it, and it's got a parachute cord through the middle. So if you ever did cut this, the line won't actually break. The parachute cord in the middle is 300 kilos breaking strain. This floats, so it's very easy to tow through the water. Since it's thicker and it's smooth, it doesn't get caught in rocks and other people as easily. It's good when you're shooting big fish because it stretches under high load. So if you're hunting big kingfish, going in the tropics and hunting the reef for bigger reef fish, like a dog-toothed tuna or a giant trevally, this is a good option because it won't get caught on the coral too easy. You want to have a hard line when targeting reef fish because they go straight for the bottom. A bungee's no good for that because it allows them to get to the bottom. So a hard float line for that. When using a bungee, typically the best cases for a bungee, a short one, say a 1 metre to 2 metre, is a good option on the end of your float line to your float. So if your float does get caught or it's got fish on it, it makes it easier to tow with. The longer bungees come into play when you're targeting big fish and open water. So things like wahoo, tuna, and marlin. If you shoot a big fish like that, and you're in deep water, you don't necessarily have to worry about them getting tangled up on the bottom. They're going to go along, or some fish will go down, but they'll be too deep to get tangled in anything. The bungee is good because it puts less strain on your holding shot, and it allows the fish plenty of give. So you shoot a big fish with a bungee, it will stretch to 2.5 times its length, and then will gauge out how much stress it's putting on the fish. So really you only want to use bungees for open water or for on the end of your float line to make it easier to tow your fish. Otherwise don't use them as your main line when you're hunting kingfish and other big reef fish.